Okay. Uh, Good afternoon or good morning. Actually, no, good afternoon. You are in Stockholm. It's
I
still light.
am.
It's
N-
amazing at this time of the year.
Well, well, actually, to be perfectly honest, it's because next to me there's one of these lights for my plants, to like keep them alive during this dark
Ah,
time of the year. So it looks brighter than it actually is. It's actually getting dark now already, and it's only two, yeah, quarter past two.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm in Dubai, but weather is also changing. It's actually improving, depending on how you look at it. But I think the inconvenience of hot is that there's nothing much you can do. The good thing about cold that you can dress. So
Yes.
it's an interesting, but I was in Europe last week and I just enjoyed walking with the fresh air. Ah, we have a visitor.
Sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. This is part of
My
clearly,
assistant, my furry assistant.
exactly. Our conversation is of interest to her or him. Is it a her? Is it a she or a he?
It's a him.
It's a him. What's his
Mm.
name?
Beto.
Beto.
Yeah, there's
It's
a
short for
story behind that.
Beethoven. Ah,
No, no, it's actually from I don't know if you know, but there's a Brazilian movie called Tropa de Elite where the
no.
head uh so basically my stepson, I wanted him to name this cat so that it would feel, it was also his. And I said he could name it anything, and then he said he wanted to name it Bobby. And then I felt like I don't know why, I just couldn't go along with that. Anyway, so we landed on Beto, which is sort of the Brazilian version of Bobby. And then we'd seen this movie, and this guy's a hero, so to like
It
a
works.
young teenage boy, that made sense. Yes. So that was our compromise.
Okay. Um, Nice segue for what we want to talk about today, creativity, art. And all this started when we were both working in Kinshasa for the United Nations.
Mm.
Uh, my focus was on HIV, TB, and malaria, and you were at OCHA.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Herding cats, as they say.
What kind of cats? Bigger ones, definitely.
Humanitarian cats. Yes. Whatever. Yes. The whole big complicated system of, organizations trying to support humanitarian action.
Yeah. And then I found my way to Kinshasa last week in August, first week in September. And I was in sort of at the end of a process of writing my first book, which I can now hold it in my hands, and your copy will come. I'm waiting for the hard version, not the hardcover, so that I can send you your
Beautiful.
copy.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
And you sent me a text while I was in Kinshasa for some reason, and I was in my old neighborhood because in my old neighborhood in Kinshasa, there is now a fancy hotel that has been built. So I was a bit
Oh.
surprised when the driver pulled into the neighborhood and said, the hotel is here. I said, but I don't recall a fancy hotel in that neighborhood, but there is one now in there. And I read your text and I was like, you know what? I think this is the person that can write or should write the afterword. So what I want to start with actually, if you can read that text, I didn't mention it to you, but I think to be useful to actually
Mm-hmm.
read the text so that there's context as to how this conversation evolves. Do you have a text
Okay.
ready, or I need to find it for
Um,
you?
I have it, but then it's behind my phone, so that means that the I can
Well, I'll see how it works.
I can get it.
Okay, get it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So just a second.
sure.
So you want me to read the whole thing and then I can answer because you know what you just said about the whole getting in touch and all that because we haven't actually talked or been in touch much. I mean, for like decades. This is a long time ago.
Yeah, the last time I saw
Okay.
you, we had lunch in New York.
Yeah.
That was the last time I saw you.
Yeah. Pre-pandemic and all the other
Yep,
crazy stuff.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep, yep.
Okay. Okay. So you want me to read the whole thing?
Please do.
Okay.
Or stop when you feel like.
Okay. So for Carl and for all who grieve love.
No, 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 no. I was talking
No?
about Shadows, the original text. You know, you sent me the text that you wrote, not
Oh,
the one
my
that,
one. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
your
yeah.
one.
Oh, of course. Okay. Yes, and that's it's so interesting that you I mean this whole thing, you know, because for me it was actually like the first text and sort of blog post that I put out on my art website. So it was it was a big deal. Actually, it was my big first step and also very personal and honest. And it was the first time I sort of, yeah, had the courage to do that, you know? And so it was so interesting that you just, you know, the reaction was instant. Like you picked it up and then like all this happened and it just so perfectly aligned with um with your book.
That's exactly what, as soon as I read it, I was like, yes, um, you will get it. You will get what I'm trying to do.
Mm,
And there won't be need for any explanation as to, okay, what this is about. And you sent
yeah.
me that text on the 2nd of September. And yeah, I mean, from the 2nd of September till send me at the end of March.
Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, it's so there's so many things that resonate. I just it's fascinating. Okay, I can read it now.
Cool.
Okay, here we go. Um, so, and it's a text also in relation, there's an image. Should I describe that? Which is a combination of, it's actually, there's a silhouette, an outline of my mother's feet, which is kind of faint. And then there's a picture that I took at night, which is like this dark sea. It's the Libyan Sea that's sort of moonlit. So it's this combination. And this is the text that accompanies that image. So shadows fascinate me in painting, in space, and in thought. They are not simply absence, but a form shaped by light. Pliny tells us that the origin of painting was a woman who traced her lover's shadow on the wall before he left for war. She did it to hold on to him, knowing he could not stay. Reading this, I realized I had done the same when my mother was in the hospital. I traced the outline of her feet while she slept. I wanted to hold on. Those marks remained. My love remained. She did not. A shadow is a presence shaped by what we can't see. Grief is the recognition of that absence. Some say it is actually love without a home. It does not erase what was, it reminds us that something mattered. Casati writes that too much light flattens the world. It is the contrast that gives form. The same is true of love. Its depth is visible only because it can vanish. Yet absence is not only loss, it also opens space. Sometimes a spark appears, a song, a sudden encounter, the rhythm of the ocean. showing that presence continues even where something else is gone. One night, standing with my feet in the ocean, looking out onto a black Libyan sea under a bright moon, I felt how darkness is not emptiness, but depth. Shadows are not nothing. They mark form even when it is hidden. Absence is vast, yet within it, sparks and small beginnings already exist. Moments, memories, sudden shifts that continue quietly, even in the midst of what is gone. These presences insist we notice them and are not blinded by absence.
Absence. I mean, when I read it in Kinshasa, of course, it had deeper meaning because, that's the place where we met. That's a
Mm,
place that gave us a lot in many different ways. But it's also a place that is often reminded by the things that are not there. And we are unable to see what's there, which is the richness, the creativity, the ingenuity, culturally speaking, the resilience of individuals. I think to me, living in Kinshasa 2007, 2008 was really an experience in trying to understand what does faith and resilience mean. Because you have lots of people that have this incredible faith in the future in the face of adversity. And to me, as a young professional, looking at that was just something that stayed with me and sort of captivated my moment. So when I read your text in Kinshasa and close to the cathedral in Kinshasa, where I used to live, you wrote, shadow is not simply absence, but a form that is shaped by light. So, of course, I have a view as to why I connected with the text, but then you had not yet read the manuscript. Eventually,
mm,
you got a copy, and then you wrote that beautiful text to close the book. So, closure is also that conversation around healing, around death, around grief. So, how did this text, which was a connection, influence what you wrote for the book?
Um, well, I feel like it came very much from the same place. I
Mm.
feel like we, the imagery that you use in your book, I think you mention grains in the ash. To me, that's very similar to the sparks in the light. Like so I feel like, we have from vastly different backgrounds and experiences, but we've experienced something fundamental that's in a similar way.
Correct.
And
Correct.
that has to do with many things. I mean, the experiences, who we are as people, how we deal with things, and so many, like the vast mysteries of all the things we don't understand. But um, I just, I could understand what you wrote, like on a very deep level. I could sort of see it, but through my own creative practice, like a sort of your poems were kind of like another version of it and someone else's story, and of course, own experiences and flavor and all that. Um, but it made sense.
Indeed, it also made sense to me. I think that's part of
Mm,
that two individuals in different parts of the world are going on their own creative journey and somehow find a connection through a text that neither of us knew we were writing. And then that sort of connects. You also say that grief is love without a home. I mean, you say they say, and I think this is a term
mm.
that. So when you read I Can Breathe, what echoes or resonance did you have, or did you find between our journey with grief and the themes of the book?
Um, yeah, many. So grief without a home. So when I read that, and I couldn't remember where, it spoke to me directly. And I'm not sure why. And then I actually, before we were having this talk, I was like, where does that actually come from? And it turns out it's just from this internet folklore, which to me in itself is so interesting because then, it's not apparently it's not attributed to,
Anyone?
someone well known or anything like that. Yeah. But it's being picked up and clearly resonates with a lot of people. And I think, and that's very much what's also, in your poems and I Can Breathe is this, is um, that love continues, even if the person or the relationship isn't there and accessible. That love continues, despite the loss of like the physical person. So this is very, and this is the key theme, in your poems that resonated because it's kind of the whole process is a little bit about figuring out then what do you do with this, all this love, I mean, all these things. And it actually takes a while to sort of figure out what to do with it, and it's not something that you just sort of have to put up with, and then you're healed and it's over. No, and that's another one of the themes I think that resonates, which I also understood it deep is this idea grief is that it's a gift, and I
Absolutely.
don't think people can understand that unless you've lived it and unless you've lived it in that way.
It's absolutely a gift, but I think when you have that first feeling, because I don't think you know it until it happens. So there's
Mm,
something that triggers it. And until you have experienced it, you actually don't know what it is. But because you start to accept that the only reason there's grief is because there is love. And you have to then continue to hold on to love as the piece that you understand, the piece that you can hold on to. Because the love that you shared with a person that died, being your mother, your cousin, whoever that person is,
mm,
doesn't die with a person. Of course, the physicality of that love is no longer. But the human interaction of the experience of love is very, very closely related to the experience of grief. And one of the things that I experienced going to San Miguel de Allende, where I think the book sort of crystallized in my head,
mm,
there was a gentleman, so we had a workshop on grief. And then there was one
oh,
gentleman's story that stayed with me. I don't remember what he had to say, but he was always in a dilemma because when he introduced himself, if he says he has two daughters, he feels that he's betraying the memory of his daughter that passed away. He had three.
mm-hmm,
If he introduces himself and he says he has three daughters, people look around looking for, okay, where's the third one? So either way, you have this dilemma of having to figure out which audience will understand when I say I have three daughters,
mm,
and which audience will understand when I say I have two daughters. But either way, you have to manage internally what it means to continue to love somebody that no longer exists physically. And that to me is a gift. But of course, most people don't see it as a gift because it is one of these situations where the understanding of grief is not discussed, is not
mm,
shared. So you go through it, people show up, they say their condolences, and life goes on. And now with social media, some of these platforms have become cemeteries where you open it and then you
yeah,
get news that somebody is no
yeah,
longer. And the emojis are not adapted to grief. You see, so even that is something that we've not been able to translate into the way we interact today on social media. Anyway,
mm,
I have two more questions for you, and maybe you have some for me. Don't know, maybe not.
yeah, I do.
Okay.
Should I? Well, okay. Well, partly in this, because one of the themes I find that is very strong, and also resonates with me. So, of course, there's the absence and the grief, but I also felt very much there's a lot of gratitude in there.
Mm.
And so I was wondering how did that, and I guess I see it as the light or the candle and the, how did that was that there from the start, or is that something that came along the journey?
The sense of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
I think it came later because when these, so I lost, I think the thing that was really marked me was my grandfather, my father, my mom. Of course, I had my grandmother as well from my mother's side. But for some reason, those three had a significant piece or element in it. And when it happened when I was 22 for my father, no, there was no element of gratitude. At that
Mm.
point, you're trying to figure
Yeah.
out who you are as an individual and how you.
Mm.
But it started to kick in when I had my first internship in 2004. And it was one of his former colleagues that granted me that opportunity. So, out of the goodness of my father's heart, his former colleague believed that his way to honor the memory of his friend and colleague was to support his colleague's son.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly you realize that the grief that I had was translated differently into somebody else's perception of what it is.
Mm.
So there I am now thinking, okay, I was crying my heart out about something that happened. But fast forward to 3 years later, like 2.5 years later, someone decides that they can do something to help me start. And then you can no longer hold on to what it was because that act has transformed a difficult moment into an opening, into something which is
Mm.
much deeper than just, I know this, you had never met me, the person who offered me
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity. But, it is because someone that he knew and trusted, he felt, I don't know if compelled is the right word, but he felt that there was an opportunity for him to engage. So suddenly you accept that grief is an opening. Grief is an element where you can go beyond the ache, the pain. So that's one. I think for my grandfather, and I speak about it as well in one of the poems, you have this very interesting moment of giving and taking at the same time. The first communion is supposed to be this very beautiful moment of celebration, of entering into the community. So the hymn was on this blessed day that God has given us. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't see any of that. Because when you are 10, I mean, when I was 10, my God was my grandfather.
Mm.
That's what he represented. And he's gone on that day when I'm supposed to be entering the church and being part of his community, the first communion, and so on and so forth. So there was, I think, as a 10-year-old, I was confused as to what this means. And there was no element of gratitude there because I just didn't understand what it meant. And how do you sort of progress in a society where it's hard to associate something which is supposed to be so good, so rewarding in mean part, with sort of the departure of what for me was my God. But along the way, you didn't realize that life in itself is also a combination of giving and taking. So if I look at these events, yes, father is taken away, but I receive something later. Grandfather is taken away, but on the same day, I'm also receiving the first communion. So when you start to associate these moments with a give and take, you realize that actually what you receive is not comparable to what you lost, but it's valuable at a particular point in time. So then you start to understand that it is not your life, and the person's contribution to your life has ended abruptly, suddenly. We have all these sort of words to express this, but they're gone. And then you have to make it work.
But what he created and the legacy and the connections ultimately lived on,
They
gave
did.
you
And
opportunities. Yeah.
that's really what it is. That's really what it is. And those are the things that become a tangible part of the experience of being connected to these individuals. So physically, they're no longer there. And I think there are times when, things happen to me and I really wished I could have the sounding board, that my father was for me. At the same time, the fact that at 22, he was no longer there, I had to figure out, how do I make decisions? And what did I learn from him that can allow me to make decisions in situations where I just don't understand or don't have a full picture? And then you start to trust yourself a little bit more. You start to trust your own instinct. And you may make a mistake, but you sort of understand that, okay, you know what, that's what I could do because I don't have anybody else to go and ask. But there are people that I could ask, but do I trust them enough to get their opinion? Yeah.
So it's navigating in that, well, I'm going to go to the visual, in that sort of darkness or absence or the unknown.
Yep.
And yeah. So it was actually doing that brought you or gave you the gratitude in the end.
It is that. It is that. Because when you are in the dark and then you look back to how you navigated in the dark and where you ended up, you can't possibly continue to hold on to what it was. But you just get to a place in your life where you say, you know what? These were the cards that I was dealt with. And when I was born, did I know that these were the cards that I'll be dealt with? No, of course not. Because we have this expectation that it is forever. So we have created as a society sort of rituals like weddings, for example, where we promise that it's forever. Great, but we change as human beings. So the ability to continue to be in requires a constant adjustment to the reality that you start to face because we change. Same as death. Death changes the reality and the circumstances, sometimes financially, emotionally, and so on and so forth. But what it should do, it should give you the opportunity to start to become who you should be. Because these sort of presence in your life are like crutches where you kind of have the ability to lean on. And when these crutches are removed early on in your life, well, you will learn to walk better, faster, or whatever quicker that you need because you don't have an alternative.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, I think you're right, hopefully, because it's not guaranteed.
No, it's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah. But and I just find that so interesting because in most religions and, there's lots of wise people before us, everyone says that, that it's really through these hardships and that's hard to understand before you've lived them. And I actually am also really grateful to that, even though, of course, everyone wants to avoid pain and loss as much as possible. But I quite like the analogy. There's a sort of tendency also because you mentioned social media and all those things and how it doesn't have a space and in terms of a sort of light and shadow and artificial light, like there's a tendency to, in a very simple way, say that shadows or the in between or that's sort of the bad thing, whereas light is the good thing. But I think was the analogy. Oh yes, like too much light just it flattens things or can be harmful. Like the light from the atomic bomb. That's not a good light, and it's really the in between and the contrast between that really gives things shape.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh, and it is hard in today's, the way the world works today to sort of see that, and maybe we're not given the tools to, or at least because it's not so many people, it's not like we're unique in this, right?
Correct.
Mm.
Correct. Um, let me. So there was one or two poems in French, actually two.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about that too. Yeah.
So, so one of the books that had an influence on me was Les
Hmm.
Bouts de Bois de Dieu.
Yes, that's what I was wondering. When I read that, I was like, "This is it's Mansembene. I know it's this book, but I wasn't sure." So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. Okay,
um,
it's my
it's
sister's favorite book, actually.
ah,
Yeah.
so that sort of book, which is about the small people in life, the role of women
Mm,
in society, have had an influence on me, and I wanted in a way to make sure that when I speak about transmission, and that's the title of that poem, I go to one of the languages that I grew up with.
mm-hmm,
So there are two languages. My mother was speaking to me in our mother tongue, which is Ani, from the southeast of Cote d'Ivoire. But I lost that language when I left in 99. I can barely hear it now. It's a small group and nobody was speaking it to me. So I couldn't pass it on to the children. Therefore,
mm,
French became the language that I could pass on to them. So that poem is really about that, I guess, a lot of the work that I'm trying to do now, which is transmission. And transmission is simply means to give a mission. So, what is a
mm,
mission that I'm giving to my children or to their generation to move forward? So that came in sort of okay. I was like, no, it has to be in the language and make reference to a key piece of that sort of West African history or
mm,
West Africa intellectual history that we have. And then Samben Usman is a giant,
mm,
among giants. So so I mean, and I sort of created that element around the visual of that poem is around how far older generation can see compared to the younger ones, even if they're sitting higher. So um, that's where some element of the French came in because I know what I mean. I the last version has an English translation of it of these two French poems. There's an English translation which was not in the original manuscript because I know what I received feedback from one of my friends who wrote one of the dedication, which was like, you know what, you need to give people at least that don't speak French an opportunity to understand because the whole thing is in English. Then you have this sort of random introduction of French in there. But it
I like
was,
that bit, but I have
uh,
the French too, so I like the sort of like, oh, I get this reference and here and there, I think that's quite fun actually.
yeah. So that was the idea, playing a little bit on this sort of element around, okay, what is a transmission piece?
Hmm.
And drawing from Samben Usman was a way to honor the West African roots that the children have.
Do they know that?
Not yet. Because Samben Usman, I mean, 13, 11 now, maybe, but they need to get to a certain point where they can start to grasp it. And in grasping it means that I need to take them more to West Africa,
Mm,
which I've not done so. Because you have to start to see, because the scene of Le Bout de Bois de Dieu is still very much present in West Africa.
hmm.
You know? So you have to be able to see that when you read it, there is a visual element, there is an experience of what it is to sort of give you that connection. But I hopefully I have enough time to make that work.
Mm. Well, and this kind of well, another one of my questions to you that I wanted to ask. So there's yes, that it's not that comes at the end, right? Sort of how they are the carriers of the memories and you're
Yeah.
transmitting. Yeah. Um, so I was wondering a bit. So this book, I Can Breathe, you're creating, it's a home for grief, as opposed to sort of, this is how you solve and get through and discard it, like the other way around, seeing as a gift and something that you keep, and there's something that you
Yep.
transform and into something, carrying on someone's legacy and wisdom. I mean, all of that. Um, but then I was wondering, do you feel like I Can Breathe, this book, is this the final resting home for grief?
No, and the title itself is written in a way that whoever reads it
Mm,
can be part of it, because it's not "You Can Breathe." The title is "I Can Breathe." So when you read the title, it's
mm,
you as an individual that will have to go through, as you go through the poems, through a journey, which is partly mine, but try to also ask yourself a question around that very powerful thing that we were thinking about, which is breathing. And there is an element around also what happened to us in the recent past with COVID-19.
mm-hmm.
And I think the power of COVID-19 was to remind us of the fragility of breathing. And
Yeah.
of course, you had the sort of George Floyd situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure probably people have written about it, but the fact that it resonated so much around the world is
Mm,
that we saw our own death in the fact that we had a virus called COVID-19 that was affecting our lung system.
mm-hmm.
So the idea suddenly of the fact that you can stop breathing, that your breath can stop, became very real for all of us. And
Yeah.
it can happen from a place where you're doing what you do on a regular basis, encountering people, giving a handshake, giving a hug, and so on and so forth. So these normal things of society became a dangerous weapon that we had to we have to sort of prevent ourselves from and protect ourselves from
Mm,
the basics of humanity, which is human interaction. So when you
mm-hmm.
can no longer interact with individual, which what you share the sort of air around you, and you're sort of breathing into that space. And of course, from a spiritual perspective, when God finished what he had to do, it was the first breath. So
Mm,
to me, the title, I was playing with different things. At some point, there was something around the guardian of the breath, because I speak about having children, and suddenly you become the guardian. I said,
mm,
nah. It's not the only thing that, and when I sort of settled on I Can Breathe, it made sense, because the text that I wrote in 2020, which is in the book as well, and it sort of make reference to I Can Breathe, mean that you had to create a space for the reality that comes with when you can breathe. And what do you do while you're breathing? Yeah. So
mm.
that is I think it's a bit of a tension in there, but I think it's an important tension to acknowledge that it is temporary. Your ability to breathe, your ability to contribute to society, your ability to do work of transmission is temporary. It can be for 47 years, it can be for more, it can be for less. But whatever time you have, you need to give, you need to
Mm.
receive, you need to create. And I think it's more of an act of creation. So no, I think there
So
is
that's
another
your
project.
message. That's your message. You
Yeah,
need to, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So it's not the
I
final. It's not the final, because the other
okay. It's
project
not
that
the
I have.
final resting place. Okay.
No, it is not, because everyone that reads it will have their own perception and understanding based on their own experiences. So, when the manuscript was read by a couple of people, each one of them a different view, and I'm reading this, okay. It's 100% okay. And somebody asked me about whether what I'm organizing in tomorrow is about reading a book. I said, no, it's not about reading a book. The book is out there now. It's about having a human conversation about grief,
Mm,
a topic that we don't discuss. We do it
mm,
when it happens at the funeral, and that's it, done.
The most
And
important stuff, huh? We don't discuss it.
no,
Wynn's afraid of talking about it. Yeah.
exactly. Because the
Mm,
same as those this I can breathe moment, we are afraid of that last breath.
hmm
And to me, we should no longer be afraid of it.
Well, and that's the beauty of highlighting also the continuity and the memories and the legacy, and that yes, the physical you can't call up the person and ask them questions or have a conversation, but in their contribution and their presence lives on in other ways. And we don't always, like you said, with the experience of this friend who gave you an opportunity, we don't always, it takes time to see, how much
Correct.
and how important it is. I mean, that's what I'm not as, especially in relation to maybe that, like losing your father and this sort of larger than life person that has like a huge meaning for who you are and so on. Like I'm a little bit, I'm not as far in that journey, but um I'm still discovering all the time how even very small things about the way my mother acted or the choices she made, and how much that influences me, or that also kind of pushes me to, a quite personal thing is just the fact that she fought tooth and nail towards the end, um and she was suffering a lot, but she did everything just to be able to live a couple more months, to be with, to contribute, to be part of it. So whenever I feel a bit like, oh, what's the point, or I get frustrated like everyone else, I just feel like I can't, that's not honoring her. She fought, I can't, and I'm perfectly healthy, I have lots to give, you keep on, and then that just that small thing, how that means so much. And like you mentioned, a breath, it's like just a simple, we take it for granted. And COVID-19 put that in a whole different perspective. Just like,
Yep.
and I found that so fascinating. It also put in perspective the being able to go to a store or somewhere and just saying hello to someone. I mean, I don't think anyone realized how important that was until that was also taken away.
Yes. And especially in societies where we are moving everything digital.
Mm, yeah.
So if you live in a society where it's everything becomes an online transaction
Yeah.
and you no longer walk to the
Mm-hmm.
supermarket, you no longer walk to the corner shop. And the reality of COVID-19 for small businesses, the ones that were able to move online, manage that transition. The ones that were physical spaces, like let's say your food shop in a busy business district,
Mm,
or there's no more foot traffic.
no.
Or if you think about the markets in Kinshasa where we met 18 years ago, if there's no foot traffic, there's no sale. If
Yeah.
people don't have to move, you mean that all these yellow minibuses don't function. So the deeper implication of not being able to breathe, we tend to forget that it doesn't happen only at the time when somebody dies. And
Mm.
COVID-19 reminded us that everything is connected to our ability to breathe clean air and fresh air.
And yet, I feel like we still don't talk all that much about the pandemic. I feel like it's still this, like, a little bit like grief, like we're trying to repress it. Everyone knows it had huge implications in so many different ways, but we're not quite, we're sort of not through it.
No, I mean, a friend of mine sent me a message. I checked on her, and she
Mm,
says I had COVID, and I was like,
yeah.
COVID? People still have COVID? Well,
Yeah, people still have COVID.
but we don't talk
Yeah,
about it anymore.
no.
So when you wrote the forward, I don't know if I'm gonna read it, but maybe not. People or I can put the text online later.
The afterword, you
What
mean?
from our experience or shared experience in Kinshasa
Mm-hmm.
came to mind as you were doing this?
Mm. Well, you mentioned at the beginning, you know. I mean, yeah, Kinshasa. I mean, I'm still, I have this bracelet from Kinshasa that I bought there. So now it's more than 20 years ago, and I haven't
Wow.
taken it off since.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
and so that, yeah, and it's a symbolic because it had a profound effect on me. And you mentioned that a little bit in the beginning. It's sort of being in an environment, seeing, it's like so much suffering and beauty and incredible resilience, all in one. It's sort of, it really, put all sort of my assumptions about how things work and the world and people, everything was just upside down, even small things, like in Sweden or up here, for example, you learn you never, um, yeah, there's like forest fires, that sort of thing is always a thing. So, when I saw someone in Kinshasa, I'll never forget, the Grand Boulevard with the big trees, and that people would sort of sweep up little piles like garbage, and then, in the nook of the actual trees, and then light those on fire. And I was just like, oh, what? This goes against like everything I've learned in terms of like safety and fire protocols and everything. But of course, the trees there are different, so it doesn't automatically turn into a forest fire. And it's just those small things like, I had to question everything. So I think a lot of this whole journey about understanding, um, myself, my, life, like how I can contribute, how I can't contribute, that started very much there. And then the creative process, yeah, actually, no, because I think we connected pretty instantly. And I think part of that was also that sort of creative lens, sort of how to, even though I think we discussed it, but I'm not even sure if we did. But, this is when I started writing a lot, actually. So, I mean, I mainly paint, and I've always seen myself more as a visual person, but I'm realizing, with this blog also that you reacted to, and also I wrote a lot in Kinshasa,
I wrote a lot in
and
Kinshasa too. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
there you go. And there
And
was a
I
lot of
yeah.
obscurity and things that were hard to understand and darkness, but also like these like incredibly bright lights, and people and stories and that are just invisible anywhere else, but are just so inspirational.
I think the Kinshasa remains one of the um, richest places from a visual perspective, from a creative perspective, because you see it almost everywhere. It's like the car will break down and they may not have the tool to sort of raise the car. Next thing you see, there are
Yeah.
two bricks that are being put there. The tire is already on its way to be fixed
Yeah.
and to be brought back. And it's like, so that ability to create with what you have, I think that's probably one of the best places from that ability to see, to feel, and to understand that it is not about, and you say, absence also opens space.
Mm,
And we saw it in Kinshasa because a lot of things were not present, given the history of the country and where they were going through. And at the time when we were there, it was just after I think they first had the elections after Kabila Senior
mm,
passed. So you sort of realize that in places where there's so much, where abundance is there, you may no longer have that creative spirit because you have access to everything. So you don't really need to search to look for and do. So yeah, I mean, I when I was there now in September, it was a full circle moment because I it was 18 years. 18
wow.
years.
I still find it hard that I can say that. Well, 20 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
part of it.
it's the fact that the car pulled into the street where I used to live.
Mm,
I was busy probably on my phone, not paying attention to where we were. And then I look up, I see the cathedral, I see the place where I used to live. And I was like, wow. I mean, I was a young professional then, very young professional. But all these memories, I think I carried through here because by that time, my father was no longer around. He was in the humanitarian sector, and here is me now in that space and trying and having to figure it out. Anyway, we could go on and on for a long time. Do you have more questions for me?
Well, I mean, I have, yeah, like you say, we could go on for a long time. So, well, I mean, a specific one in terms of your creative process and the way this grief contributed to that. So you mentioned Kinshasa and that, being also a spark, I guess, to to writing a lot and so on, trying to figure things out. But how do you feel? Because this is something that I also wonder a little bit about. It's this privilege, sort of like you get to visit and meet people that are living under the most difficult circumstances imaginable, and you're also you know privileged enough to be part of an elite, like an international one, where you
Yeah.
see the sort of bigger structures and how things work or don't work. Like, how does that contribute to that? And yeah, to your creative process. That's what I'd like to know, because I wonder a little bit about that myself, because yeah, because it's not always comfortable,
No.
Yeah.
This is what keeps us grounded. It's a reality piece element of the majority is able to do with very little.
Mhm.
And they create things that are powerful, vibrant in colors. And you can almost feel the pain. And that's a reminder that the pain that they've gone through to create is not similar to your pain or my pain.
Mm.
But because we focus on the humanitarian side, and wherever I've worked, even in the past 10 years in the private sector, my lens was always focused on the humanitarian side of life, not on the transactional side of it. And that fundamental question of when you're in a position of privilege and power, it's all relative, but it is a position of privilege and power.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do from that position to at least uplift one person? And uplifting doesn't mean that you're sending them gifts, but you allow them to be better in the environment as best as you can. So yesterday, when I was speaking with Boris, we designed the cover of a book, Steam.
Ah, okay, nice.
Yeah. And it was at the end of the conversation, we got to speak about how the business is going. I mean, he's been running this small business for 8 years, which is a miracle because of the area in which he operates, which is creative economy, is just now sort of booming. But for a group of young Togolese to do animation work in a French-speaking country, it's remarkable because it's a tiny market, but this group of young Africans are committed to what they do and the belief that they can transform their society through their work. And to me, having him and his team design the cover of a book means that around the world, whoever sees that book being online on Amazon or other platforms or in their home, there is an element of these young creators that is present. And that's how I see that contribution. To be able to give from that place of privilege an opportunity for a younger person to have their work seen in different parts of the world differently, because what they do primarily is animation, 2D, 3D. They don't do book cover design.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an interesting challenge. And I remember when I sent him a WhatsApp, he said to me, "It's a very good brief. I'll get back to you." Within a week, I had the cover. So the position of privilege and power is a responsibility to uplift. It's a responsibility to give that mission in terms of transmission. So what do I have that might be an intangible that gives the other person the opportunity to be uplifted? And that's why the cover is what it is.
Mm. Mm.
It is a very, very clear reminder that you have so much creativity, so much talent and potential on the African continent.
Yeah.
And that creativity that these young people have, I am nowhere near. Because my work, in a way, was easy. I could get to Mexico, meet with people that had been doing this for their whole life, spend a week with artists, creators, and then start my own creative journey that now turned into the first book. And I'm thinking of the second one or the third one, and the second one will have to be, I want it to be in French, so we'll figure out if I can actually still write in French. I don't know what form it will take, but the second one will be in French. So to your question, we must never forget that we are in a position of privilege. And that's a little bit of a lottery of life. Okay.
Mm.
So I was born in Cote d'Ivoire. And for now, 27 years, I have not lived in Cote d'Ivoire. So I am a collection of multiple stories and experiences that I've had. And every time I have the opportunity, I want to acknowledge the opportunity that I've had in a different way. Hence the book cover by this young artist. Hence, so a friend of mine, a French Comorian artist, was telling me that everything I do, I want to do it in community. So even the book, I have all these different people that have been part of it.
Nice.
There's you, there's Susanna in Argentina. There are 4 people at the back, including my own daughter. And then you also have these young artists in Lomé that I met back. When was that? It was probably 2020, probably. I think either probably before COVID that I met them. And yeah, I left Lomé, but Lomé was also one of these beautiful places that I've had the opportunity to experience. So my objective from the place of privilege that I have and acknowledge is to make sure that I provide others with an opportunity to get to a different place. And I really wish that through that work, people can recognize the artistry of these young people, and then say, you know what, I can go and support them.
Yeah, I have so many things to say too, but I don't know how to, because I mean, for me also something I've realized having my creative practice, it was sort of okay, I did it. I felt like it's a privilege thing I could do on the side, but through life, all this stuff, and using the creative is an actual. It's like it's renewal in itself.
Yeah.
So these young, Togolese, animators, they're creating is life, and that's why it's not surprising that there's so much of that in Africa. I mean, if I'm, there's it's, and then, and I've seen also now, COVID with everything else that's happening, and huge changes in Europe everywhere. Um, I've just realized that it has actually a much bigger role to play than I thought, you know. To give a more specific example, I met some Ukrainian artists, and there was a young woman, and what she did was she would take the pieces from bombed out buildings and then make these beautiful tiny little mosaics close by of like a tree of life to sort of honor what was there. And I felt that's also very much the legacy, the memory, creating something new out of that. Yeah.
We're all doing it. We may not naming it,
Yeah,
but
and
we're
it's
all doing
more
it.
important now than ever. I think that's what I've realized with all this, and also reading, your book, is that it's not a side hustle. It's like it is the very essence of everything. Mm,
And some people do it full time.
I know, so lucky.
But we all have some elements of creativity that is often suppressed.
Yeah, all children, we all start
Yeah.
off,
Yep.
so it's part of our DNA, everyone.
Correct. Correct. So, final question for me.
Mm-hmm.
Which one, if you were to pick, wasn't the one that resonated the most with you?
Oh, oh, that's hard. That's not fair, Carl. You should have asked me that before because there's so many and there's very different things. I think maybe uh, like certain sentences kind of sat with me.
Yeah.
Uh, Let me see. I think I wrote some down. So when I'm not sure I remember exactly, because also the book, it's a bit like a story, and
Yep.
it's also intriguing because it's like their impressions and so on. So I don't know the full story. So I want to know more about like, yes, but what happened? What is this? Yes, and when did he move here? And who said and what? I felt like
So
and I didn't quite, you don't get that, but that's part of it too.
by one of the beauties about using poetry as a form is that you can leave things out.
Yeah.
And because I started with a memoir, sort of memoir style, and I have a first manuscript that I worked on before COVID, and I was busy on that, and then I changed jobs, and I just didn't have the mental space to work on it. And this year, when I discovered that, okay, you know what, you can actually use a different form, and I read a book by Jennifer Clement, which is sort of a
Mm-hmm.
biography of Basquiat,
Mm.
but she used a very different format as well. She used short, sort of kind of op-ed style text. So you have this short text that sort of tell the story. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I can play with that. And I decided, you know what, this probably will be form. So, you leave things out. You
Mm.
sort of create images and then you left them hanging. So because it becomes a very playful exercise. And I mean, I had fun trying to sort of tell the story and keeping that sort of arc and say, you know what, I'll let people imagine this part.
Mm.
Which
And it
is
gives them room too, right? To be part of
correct.
it. Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I know it was not a fair question, but why not? Um,
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, there are quotes and there's sentences and things like that, but there's a lot of work in there.
Thank you. I'm very, very grateful of 18 years of friendship. And this morning, I got a note from my pen pal. Do you
Uh-huh.
remember pen pal?
No. No? Yeah, I'm like, I remember the concept. I'm like, who's this? This is
So
intriguing.
I
Like,
am
was
still
it a paper
friend.
and pencil letter? No, it was
Yes,
like
I
a,
am still friend with my
oh,
pen pal.
wow.
So she sent me a note this morning that she ordered a book, and I think that was, it's a gift. To
Nice.
have known her since I was probably in primary school, and I went to visit her for first time in '98. Then we
Where was
went to
she?
She lives in a town outside Krefeld, after Köln. So
Okay.
the first time I went to visit her, it was in that village of Krefeld. And yeah, we're still friends.
That's great.
We no longer write
Yeah.
letters to each other because there's new technology. And I actually found all the letters that we exchanged. I found all of them.
Nice.
So I still have
Mm,
them. That could be a book. Now, it could be an interesting book that her and I can write about this friendship that has lasted, that young boy from Cote d'Ivoire and this young girl from Germany. And over the years, we have maintained that relationship. And that's another example of being able to breathe
mm,
because it's your ability to maintain your relationship over time. So when you say I can breathe, what do you use that breath for?
hmm.
Maintain those links, those connections, so that not everything in life is transactional.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
breathing is an exchange, it's a constant exchange. You replenish, you empty, you replenish, you empty,
Mm,
but it doesn't stop. And to me, relationships are very important and they have to be meaningful and they have to last. Otherwise,
yeah.
it's you're wasting your breath. Anyway,
Mm.
so good to have this conversation with you.
Yes,
Uh,
lovely.
we will have the conversation in Stockholm as soon as Q1 2026. I'll let you know as soon as I have more clarity in terms of my first quarter. And
Okay,
then
great.
we can, yes, we can reconnect and
Yes, I'm
continue.
looking forward. This
Me
has been a
too.
pleasure. So much fun. And it's so great that it just happened very, like you said, organically. It's really interesting. Then you think how things align, It's
Yeah,
great. It's beautiful.
it is.
Mm.
Okay, let me stop the recording now.
Okay.